Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto inherited Bruce Wayne's legacy and became a Batman, Naruto x Harley Quinn, DC. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Legacy of the Shadow Fox. The rain in Kohona Gotham didn't fall, it assaulted. It came down in thick, slanted sheets that hammered against the gargoyles clinging to the neo-Gothic spires of the city's upper levels and collected in the gutters of the lower districts, mixing with the chromatic slick of neon and grime. Down at the Junin district port, it was a percussive roar on the corrugated steel roofs of the warehouses. A sound that masked the footsteps of lesser men. But it could not mask the hunter. He moved through the downpour not as a man, but as a sliver of the storm itself, a kinetic void against the strobing cityscape. From the apex of a crane, draped in shadow and slick with water, the Batman surveyed his domain. This was not the Batman of a decade past. The silhouette was leaner, the armor a matte carbon fiber weave that absorbed light like a black hole. The cowl was sharper, the ears more elongated and swept back, reminiscent of a fox's, and the symbol on his chest was a stylized fusion of bat and spiraling fox head. An homage to a legacy he could barely remember and one he could never escape. Below, the last of the Tory clan's cargo trucks was making a desperate run for a waiting freighter. They were clumsy, brutish, a relic of a bygone era of crime when muscle and guns were enough. Tonight, they were merely prey. He dropped. No cable, no theatrical glide. Just a controlled, 50-foot plummet into the heart of the chaos. He landed on the truck's roof with a concussive thud that buckled the metal, his armored boots magnetizing for a split second to hold his position. The driver screamed, swerving wildly. Two guards riding shotgun on the roof, clad in happy coats over ballistic vests and armed with modified P90s, turned to fire. They never got the chance. Batman was a blur of motion. He didn't move like a brawler. He moved like a dancer, a predator. It was the style Bruce had beaten into him, the brutal efficiency of 100 martial arts, but it was infused with something else, something wilder. More fluid. The Uzumaki blood in his veins sang a song of unpredictable momentum. He flowed under the first guard's wild spray of bullets, his cape snapping like a wing, and came up behind him. An elbow, precisely placed to the brachial plexus, rendered the man's arm useless. A spinning heel kick to the temple, and the guard crumpled. The second man was more cautious, backing away, trying to keep a bead on the phantom before him. Batman feinted left, drawing the man's fire, then coiled and launched himself off the side of the truck's container, his boots kicking off the wet metal. Defying gravity for a breathtaking moment, he twisted midair, landing behind the second guard and sweeping his legs out from under him. The man hit the roof with a wet crack and lay still. The truck screeched to a halt, fishtailing on the slick asphalt. Four more Tory thugs poured out of the cab and the lead car, their faces a mixture of bravado and raw terror. They saw the legend. The demon of Kohona Gotham. Get him, one shouted, his voice thin against the storm. Batman dropped to the ground in front of them, landing silently in a low crouch. His cowl's lenses glowed a faint, analytical white. He saw their weapons, their stances, their heart rates. He saw the fight laid out before him like a schematic. He moved. The first thug swung a steel pipe. Batman swayed inside the arc of the swing. The pipe hissing past his ear, and drove the heel of his palm into the man's nose. Bone crunched. The second came at him with a knife. Batman caught the man's wrist, twisted, and used his momentum to throw him into the third, a tangle of limbs and surprised grunts. The fourth, the leader, hesitated, fumbling for his sidearm. That was all the time it took. A small, fox-faced shuriken, razor-sharp and non-lethal, flew from Batman's gauntlet and embedded itself in the man's gun hand. He howled, dropping the weapon. Batman closed the distance in two long strides, his hand clamping around the man's throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. The cargo, Batman's voice was a low growl, filtered through his modulator to sound like grinding stone. Who was it for? Not Penguin. He doesn't have the capital for this level of hardware. The man choked, his eyes wide with terror. I don't know. It was a proxy buyer. Anonymous. Paid in untraceable crypto. Wrong answer. The grip tightened. The man's face started to turn purple. Wait, Warehouse 7, on the North Pier. That's the main collection point. That's all I know, I swear. Batman held him for a second longer. The cowl's sensors analyzing the man's biometrics, searching for the telltale spikes of deception. He found none. He dropped the man, who collapsed to the wet ground, gasping for air. The police sirens were a faint wail in the distance now, a predictable response. He had no time for them. He fired a grappling line to the top of a nearby warehouse, the high-tension cable nearly silent as it ascended. And was pulled into the darkness. He melted back into the storm, leaving behind 6 unconscious thugs and a truck full of questions. Warehouse 7 smelled of rust, brine, and dead fish. The rain drummed a frantic rhythm on the vast metal roof. Inside, darkness was king, a thick, suffocating blackness broken only by the thin beams of moonlight piercing through grimy, broken skylights. Batman moved through the cavernous space with an unnatural silence, his boots making no sound on the graded catwalks 50 feet above the main floor. His multi-spectrum visor scanned the area, painting the world in shades of topographical data and heat signatures. The building was empty of life, but not of product. Dozens of large, unmarked crates were stacked in neat rows below. He descended on a whisper-quiet line, landing like a phantom on the concrete floor. He approached the nearest crate, a small, multi-frequency laser emerging from his gauntlet to slice through the lock. He expected weapons, high-grade military hardware, illegal cybernetics, maybe even precursor chemicals for some new designer drug. That was the currency of Kohona Gotham's underworld. The crate door swung open. Inside, cushioned in high-density foam, was not a weapon, but a device. It was sleek, complex, and utterly alien to the port's usual traffic. He ran a scan, the data streaming across the inside of his cowl. Designation: Psychsonic Resonator. Function: broadcasts low-frequency, psychoactive waveforms. Induces states of paranoia, aggression, and suggestibility in subjects within a 500-meter radius. He moved to the next crate. More of the same. Neural feedback dampeners designed to bypass subliminal resistance. Emotion wave amplifiers. This wasn't an arsenal for a war on the streets. This was an arsenal for a war on the mind. The level of sophistication was staggering, far beyond the capabilities of any known player in the city. The Tory clan were merely mules, disposable delivery boys for a far more intelligent and dangerous client. He stood in the center of the warehouse, the sheer scale of the operation settling on him like a shroud. Someone was planning to turn Kohona Gotham into a psychological slaughterhouse. But who, and why? As he prepared to leave, his mission complete for the night, a flicker of something anomalous caught his eye. A scan ghost, an object whose material composition was so foreign it barely registered. It was tucked into the foam lining of the crate he had first opened. He reached in, his gauntleted fingers plucking it free. It was a playing card. It was impossibly clean, its edges perfectly sharp, its surface pristine despite the grime of the warehouse. On its face was the stylized image of a court jester, rendered in lurid shades of purple and green. The jester was grinning, a wide, manic, and deeply unsettling smile that seemed to hold a personal and profound mockery. It was a joker. The card felt cold in his hand, a piece of immaculate madness in a world of predictable filth. He stood there for a long moment, the rain hammering on the roof, the only sound in the sudden, chilling silence. This changed everything. The Uzumaki, a sleek, angular vehicle that was less a car and more a ground-based strike fighter, tore through the abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city. Its hybrid engine was a low thrum of contained power, the ONL. Why light its twin beams cutting through the oppressive darkness? It passed through a holographic projection of a solid rock wall and into the roaring expanse of the Batcave. Waterfalls cascaded from the cavern's impossibly high ceiling, feeding the river that snaked through the vast space and plunging into a seemingly bottomless abyss. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and ozone. Ancient, jagged rock formations were seamlessly integrated with platforms of brushed steel and arrays of humming holographic monitors that cast a blue glow on the stone. Naruto stepped out of the vehicle, the armored plates of his suit hissing as they unlocked. He pulled off the cowl, letting it fall onto the driver's seat. His blonde hair was matted with sweat, and his blue eyes, so often filled with a practiced, charming light in his other life, were as cold and sharp as chips of ice. The exhaustion was a physical weight on his shoulders, but he ignored it. A rather productive evening, I see, Master Naruto. The voice, calm and impeccably British, belonged to Iruka Pennyworth. The man stood waiting by the central console, a silver tray in his hands bearing a steaming mug and a small plate of rice crackers. He was older, with a kind face and a scar across the bridge of his nose, but his posture was as straight and rigid as the day he had sworn to serve the Wayne family. He was more than a butler, he was Naruto's guardian, his conscience, and the last living link to the life that had been stolen from him. Productive isn't the word I'd use, Naruto said, his voice raw and stripped of the modulator's gravel. He walked to the main analysis table and placed the Joker card on its sterile surface. Iruka set the tray down beside it. The Tory clan are in GCPD custody. Their operation at the port has been completely dismantled. He looked at the card, his brow furrowing slightly. What is this? The architect, Naruto replied, stripping off his gauntlets. The Tory clan were just the delivery boys. Someone else is pulling the strings. Someone with access to technology I've only seen in Wayne R&D's most theoretical projects. He explained what he'd found. The psych warfare devices, the sheer scale of it. Iruka listened, his expression growing more grave with every word. I have cross-referenced all of Master Bruce's active files in the archived Underworld database, Iruka said, tap. Ping a few commands into a nearby holographic interface. There is no criminal entity in Kohona Gotham, or anywhere else on record, who uses this calling card or this methodology. He's new, then, Naruto muttered, staring at the card's grinning face. Or he's been a ghost until now. He picked up the mug Iruka had brought. Green tea. Iruka always knew. He took a long sip, the warmth a small comfort in the cave's chill. You were pushing yourself too hard, Iruka said softly, his tone shifting from professional to paternal. You were out for 12 hours last night tracking the Tory supply lines. You have the Wayne Foundation Gala at the KGCFCE in less than 2 hours. You haven't slept in 36. Sleep is a luxury, Iruka. The city doesn't afford us many of those. Bruce thought the same way, Iruka countered, his voice gentle but firm. And it cost him. You cannot carry his burden in the exact same manner. You must find your own way, Naruto. You are not him. Naruto's gaze drifted across the cave to a large, illuminated glass case. Inside, mounted like a museum piece, was Bruce's batsuit. It was bulkier, heavier, scarred from 1,000 battles. It was the armor of a ghost, a constant, silent testament to the man who had saved him, trained him, and then vanished from his life, leaving nothing but a mission in a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I know I'm not him, Naruto said, his voice barely a whisper. He knew what he was doing. I'm just making it up as I go. Iruka placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You are more prepared than you believe. Now, go, shower, put on your other mask. The city needs Naruto Wayne tonight as much as it needs the Batman. The Kohona Gotham Correctional Facility for the criminally esoteric was a masterpiece of architectural dread. A sprawling Gothic fortress on a secluded island, its stone walls seemed to weep with the misery they contained. Tonight, however, its grim facade was decorated with strings of elegant lights. And the manicured lawns of the administrative wing were filled with the city's elite. Valets in crisp uniforms parked ludicrously expensive cars while men in tailored suits and women in dazzling dresses mingled, sipping champagne and making deals. The contrast between the party and the prison was grotesque, and Naruto Wayne navigated it with a predator's grace. Dressed in a custom-tailored Tom Ford suit, the picture of effortless wealth and charm, he smiled, shook hands, and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. This was his most difficult battlefield. On the streets, threats were physical, immediate. Here, they were veiled in pleasantries, hidden behind polite smiles. He hated it. Mr. Wayne, a pleasure to see you. It was Commissioner Inoichi Yamanaka, a good man in an impossible job. Your foundation's generosity is the only thing keeping this facility's psychiatric wing operational. The city's mental health is one of our top priorities, Commissioner, Naruto said smoothly, his smile never wavering. A healthy mind is the cornerstone of a healthy society, after all. As the commissioner was pulled away by a city councilman, Naruto found his gaze drawn to a woman standing near. A display on advanced psychotherapy techniques. She was talking to the hospital's administrator, but she wasn't just listening, she was analyzing, her sharp, intelligent eyes taking in everything. She wore a simple but elegant emerald dress that complemented her blonde hair, which was tied up in a professional but stylish manner. There was an energy about her, a focused intensity that set her apart from the preening socialites. The administrator spotted him. "Ah, Mr. Wayne, perfect timing. I'd like you to meet our head of psychiatric research, the brilliant Drive. Harley Quinn." The woman turned, and for a moment, her analytical gaze met his. Her eyes were a striking shade of blue, and they held no hint of the fawning deference he usually received. They held curiosity. "Mr. Wayne," she said, her voice clear and confident. She offered her hand. "It's an honor. Your family's work in criminal psychology is foundational." He took her hand. Her grip was firm. "The honor is all mine, doctor. I'm just the money. You're the one on the front lines. It must be fascinating work." "Fascinating is one word for it," she replied, a tiny, knowing smile playing on her lips. "It's a study in extremes. The capacity for human brilliance twisted into knots of obsession. Tell me, what drives a man like you, a man who has everything, to invest so heavily in the minds of those who have lost their way?" It was a direct hit. A scalpel disguised as a question. She was testing him. He chuckled, a disarming, practiced sound. "Perhaps it's a form of enlightened self-interest. The healthier the city's collective mind, the safer my investments." Or, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice, "Perhaps I'm just as fascinated by obsession as you are, doctor. The line between dedication and delusion can be terrifyingly thin. Wouldn't you agree?" Her eyes lit up with genuine intellectual fire. He had returned the serve perfectly. "It is the very line I walk every day, Mr. Wayne. Some believe that to truly understand the abyss, you have to be willing to lean over the edge. Others believe that's how you fall in. And which do you believe, Drive Quinzel?" he asked, genuinely intrigued now. This was no vapid socialite. This was a mind. "I believe," she said, her smile widening just enough to be captivating, "in wearing a very sturdy safety harness." They stood there for a moment, locked in a silent battle of wits. The noise of the party fading into a dull hum. It was the most stimulating conversation he'd had as Naruto Wayne in years. He was about to press further when her name was called from across the room. "Duty calls," she said with a hint of regret. "It was a pleasure, Mr. Wayne, truly. The pleasure was all mine, doctor." He watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. Iruka was right. He had to find his own way. Bruce had allies, but he held them at arm's length. He operated from a position of absolute solitude. Naruto, however, felt a strange, unfamiliar pull. Admonition that the fight to come could not be won alone. His mind shifted back to the cold warehouse, the advanced technology, and the single, smiling card. The Joker. A new kind of abyss was opening up in his city, and Harley Quinzel, in her own way, was already staring right into it. The thought sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the night air. The game had changed. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Cage of the White Eye. The boardroom of Wayne Enterprises was a sanctuary of calculated silence, perched 70 stories above the frenetic energy of Kohona Gotham. It was a space designed to project power. With a single, colossal table of polished obsidian surrounded by 20 chairs that cost more than the average citizen's car. One entire wall was a panoramic window, offering a god's eye view of the city, a sprawling vista of Gothic spires, holographic advertisements that painted the perpetual rain in shades of cyan and magenta, and the distant, brooding silhouette of Arkham Island. For Naruto, it was a cage, more confining than any alleyway or rooftop. He sat at the head of the table, the seat Bruce had once occupied, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that felt more like a costume than the Batsuit ever did. He projected an aura of bored, detached authority, a mask he had perfected over years. His eyes, however, were sharp, missing nothing. He scanned the faces around the table. Old money board members, ruthless division heads, and at the far end, the delegation from the Hyuga Zaibatsu. They were here to discuss the final stages of the Amaterasu Project, a joint venture to power the entire city with a network of clean, subterranean geothermal energy converters. It was Wayne Enterprises' magnum opus, a project that would genuinely change the world. And it was bleeding. 3 targeted system failures in as many weeks. Lucius Fox Jr., son of Bruce's legendary tech guru and now head of R&D, reported, his voice tight with frustration. The first was a coolant leak. The second, a catastrophic short in a primary conduit. This morning, a series of micro-fractures were discovered in the main reactor's containment shell. These are not accidents. It's sabotage. Precision engineered to be untraceable. An anxious murmur rippled through the room. Naruto's gaze settled on the Hyuga delegation. They were led by Hiyashi Hyuga, a man whose stern, aristocrat, icy face looked as though it were carved from granite. His eyes, a pale, unnerving lavender, held a chilling emptiness. Seated beside him was his daughter and heiress, Hinata Hyuga. She was the picture of corporate royalty, an immaculate, custom-fitted business suit, hair styled in a severe but elegant bun, her posture ramrod straight. She kept her gaze demurely fixed on the datapad in front of her. But Naruto saw the subtle tension in her hands, the way her fingers gripped the stylus just a little too tightly. He had met her at functions before. She was always quiet, perpetually in her father's shadow. A porcelain doll in a world of sharks. But Naruto, a connoisseur of masks, sensed layers to her that few bothered to see. The Hyuga Zaibatsu entered into this partnership with the understand. Ding that Wayne Enterprises' security was unparalleled, Hiyashi stated, his voice a low, gravelly timbre that commanded attention. Our investment is substantial. These failures are eroding our confidence. The threat was unspoken but clear. My security is the best in the world, Hiyashi, Naruto replied, his tone smooth, almost lazy, belying the sharp edge beneath. Which means this is an inside job. Or our saboteur is using technology we haven't seen before. Either way, it's being handled. The meeting devolved into a predictable mess of corporate posturing, damage control, and thinly veiled accusations. Naruto let it wash over him, his mind already elsewhere. He was analyzing the data from Lucius, cross-referencing it with the schematics of the psych tech from the docks. The methods were different, but the level of sophistication felt connected. A quiet, surgical precision. An intelligence that mocked conventional security. As the meeting adjourned, the Hyuga delegation rose. As she passed him, Hinata's datapad slipped from her grasp, clattering to the obsidian floor. As she bent to retrieve it, her eyes met Naruto's for a fleeting second. In that lavender gaze, he saw not timidity, but a flash of something else, fierce intelligence and a desperate, silent plea. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of polite embarrassment. She gathered her device and followed her father out of the room. Melting back into his shadow, Naruto stood at the panoramic window long after everyone had left, watching the rain trace paths down the armored glass. A dropped datapad, a look. It was too deliberate for an accident. It was a signal. The porcelain doll was trying to tell him something. That night, the Batman moved through the Hyuga Zaibatsu's corporate headquarters like a ghost through a machine. The building was a testament to Hyuga power, a stark, minimalist tower of white marble and polarized glass that stood in sharp contrast to Wayne Tower's Gothic grandeur. Its security systems were legendary, a labyrinth of pressure plates, laser grids, and biometric scanners. To the Batman, it was simply a puzzle box waiting to be solved. He bypassed the systems not with force, but with finesse. A perfectly timed electromagnetic pulse disabled a floor panel. A cryogenic aerosol froze a laser emitter for the 0.8 seconds it took him to pass through its beam. He moved through the silent, pristine halls with an eerie grace, his suit systems identifying the building's digital architecture, seeking the core server room. He found it on the 45th floor, a vault protected by a Gene S. Equance lock keyed to the Hyuga bloodline. A problem for anyone else. For him, it was a minor delay. He'd procured a sample of Hiyashi's DNA from a champagne flute at a gala months ago, a standard precaution for all major players in the city. A micro-drone, no bigger than a fly, synthesized the genetic key and interfaced with the scanner. The heavy vault door hissed open. The server room was a frigid, sterile chamber, bathed in the cool blue light of the humming mainframes. He jacked in directly, his gauntlet's interface cable snaking into the central port. Data flooded his cowl's display, a torrent of encrypted files and firewalls. He unleashed a decryption algorithm, a digital predator of his own design, and began to hunt. He was searching for any record of advanced technology that could have been used to sabotage the Amaterasu project, any secret R&D that matched the component signatures Lucius had identified. Minutes stretched into an hour. He found whispers of illegal bioengineering, hints of corporate espionage against their rivals, but nothing concrete. Looking for something, Wayne-san. The voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet it cut through the hum of the servers like a shard of glass. He didn't flinch. He didn't even turn. His internal sensors had detected a life sign entering the room 30 seconds ago, its heart rate elevated but controlled, its breathing almost perfectly silent. He had allowed the approach, curious. He finished his data transfer, the progress bar completing in his vision, and slowly turned. Hinata Hyuga stood in the doorway, clad not in a business suit, but in a simple, dark training GI. Her hair was down, flowing over her shoulders. The demure heiress was gone. In her place stood someone with the coiled posture of a trained fighter. Her pale eyes, which had seemed timid in the boardroom, were now focused and intense. They seemed to glow with a faint, internal luminescence. "You're faster than I expected," he said, his voice the modulated growl of the bat. "The internal alarms should have tripped the moment I breached the server." "I disabled them," she said, her voice steady. "I knew you were coming. In fact, I was counting on it. Dropping my datapad was a gamble. A dangerous one. Your father doesn't strike me as a forgiving man." A flicker of pain crossed her features. "He is not." She took a hesitant step into the room. "The sabotage on the Amaterasu project, it is my father's doing. Not him directly, but a radical faction within our own company, led by my cousin, Neji. They believe the partnership with Wayne Enterprises is a betrayal of the Hyuga family's technological purity. They want to see it fail, acquire the wreckage of the project for pennies, and rebuild it under our name alone." This confirmed Naruto's suspicions, but the confession from the heiress herself was an unexpected move. "Why tell me? This is treason against your own family. Because they are going too far," she whispered, her control finally cracking. Her voice filled with a desperate passion. "They aren't just sabotaging machinery. Their methods are becoming more and more dangerous. The micro-fractures in the reactor shell, if they had gone unnoticed for another cycle, the resulting fallout would have rendered a quarter of the city uninhabitable. They are willing to sacrifice innocent lives for corporate pride. I cannot stand by and watch that happen." Her pale eyes seemed to see more than the armored suit before her. It was an unnerving sensation. "My family possesses a unique genetic trait," she explained, as if reading his thoughts. "A latent biosensory ability. We call it the Byakugan. It allows us to perceive the flow of energy, in living beings, in machinery. I can see the stress points in a building's foundation, the corrupted data flow in a server, the lie in a person's heart. My father and Neji use it for control and conquest. I want to use it to protect." She was telling the truth. His suit's bioscanners confirmed it. She was laying her life, her entire future, in the hands of a vigilante. It was an act of incredible bravery or incredible foolishness. Perhaps both. Suddenly, the blue lights of the server room flashed crimson. A synthesized voice echoed through the chamber. "Security Protocol Zeta activated. Lockdown initiated." Heavy steel shutters slammed down over the doorway. Hinata gasped, her eyes wide. "Neji. He must have been monitoring my movements." "He didn't just monitor you," Batman growled, his gaze sweeping the room. "He herded you in here with me. It's a trap." From concealed panels in the ceiling, 6 figures dropped silently into the room. They were clad in sleek, white and gray tactical gear, their faces obscured by porcelain masks. The Hyuga clan's secret police. Their elite enforcers. And leading them, standing with his arms crossed, was a young man with the same pale eyes as Hinata, but his were filled with a cold, arrogant fire. "Neji Hyuga, sister," Neji said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Associating with the city's vermin. Have you no shame? And you," he turned his gaze to Batman, "the demon of Kohona Gotham. You are nothing more than a myth, a ghost story to frighten criminals. Today, we will exorcise you." The 6 enforcers moved to surround them. They didn't draw weapons. They settled into a unique martial arts stance, palms open, fingers extended. The gentle fist. A style designed to attack an opponent's internal systems. His armor is too thick for our strikes, Neji commanded. Target the joints, the visor, the weak points. Disable him. The girl is to be taken alive. Hinata stepped back, moving to stand beside Batman. Her fear was palpable, but beneath it was a bedrock of resolve. She settled into a similar, though less aggressive, stance. I will not let you do this. Batman cracked his neck. Stay behind me, he ordered her, not as a command to a damsel, but as a strategist directing a valuable asset. Watch their patterns. Tell me what your eyes see. The first two enforcers attacked, moving with blinding speed. They didn't punch or kick. They thrust with their open palms, aiming for the vulnerable seams in his armor at the elbows and neck. It was like fighting ghosts. They were fluid, precise, and utterly silent. But Batman was not a man, he was a force of nature. He met their surgical strikes with a storm of brutal efficiency. He sidestepped a palm thrust, caught the attacker's arm, and shattered his elbow with a merciless twist. He blocked another strike with his armored gauntlet and responded with a powerful front kick that sent the man flying into a server rack, which exploded in a shower of sparks. The two on your left. Hinata's voice cut through the chaos. Their energy flow is focused on the floor panels. They're trying to magnetize your boots. Acting instantly on her intel, Batman fired his grapple into the ceiling and launched himself upwards, just as the floor panels beneath him glowed with intense magnetic energy. He swung through the server room, a dark pendulum of destruction, and kicked two more of the enforcers into the far wall. He landed in a crouch, the four enforcers down, but already struggling to rise. Neji watched, his expression unchanged, a mask of cold fury. Impressive, Neji said, but you are still just a brute in a suit. Neji moved, and the air itself seemed to part for him. He was faster than the others, his movements a blur. He wasn't aiming for the joints. He was aiming for Batman's chest, his open palm striking the Bat-Fox symbol with incredible force. The suit's armor held, but the kinetic energy transferred through it was immense, staggering Naruto. It felt like being hit by a freight train. A second strike followed, then a third. A rapid-fire assault of palm strikes. A technique Neji called 64 palms. Each blow landed on the exact same spot, creating micro-fractures in the armor's composite plating. Armor integrity at 87%, 74%, 61%, the suit's AI warned in his ear. I can see it, Hinata cried out. He's concentrating all his energy into a single point. His own stance is compromised. His right leg, there's a flaw in his energy rotation. Naruto processed the information in a nanosecond. On Neji's next strike, he didn't block. He pivoted, letting the blow glance off his pauldron, and drove a vicious, steel-reinforced kick into the back of Neji's right knee. Neji's leg buckled with a sickening pop. His perfect form shattered, and he cried out, a sound of pure shock and agony. His assault ceased. Batman stood over him, a towering shadow. The remaining enforcers froze, their will broken. It's over, Batman growled. He turned to Hinata, who was staring, breathless, at the scene. He saw not just admiration in her eyes, but something more. A connection forged in the heat of combat, an attraction to the decisive, overwhelming power that had just protected her and validated her choice. You have the evidence you need from the server, she said. Her voice shaking slightly. Expose them. Your father will disown you. Or worse. It is a price I am willing to pay, she said, her chin held high. Some cages are meant to be broken. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He fired his grapple line at the ceiling, shattering a skylight, and was gone, pulled into the welcoming darkness of the rainy night, Levi. Hinata Hyuga standing victorious amidst the wreckage of her old life. Chapter 2 end. Next. Chapter 3. An echo in the alleyways. The underbelly of Kohona Gotham was a world away from the sterile towers of the financial district. Down in the Shima ward, known colloquially as the depths, the perpetual rain mixed with steam hissing from broken pipes and the smoke of countless noodle stalls, creating a dense, perpetually twilight fog. Neon signs, depicting everything from ramen bowls to kanji for pachinko, and less savory pursuits, bled their colors into the mist, casting long, distorted shadows that writhed like living things. This was a place of forgotten gods and desperate men, where honor was a commodity and life was cheap. For the past week, it had also been a slaughterhouse. The heads of the Inuzuka clan, brutal enforcers who ran the illegal gambling dens, were found in their own penthouse office, throats slit with surgical precision. Old man Akamichi, the undisputed king of the black market food supply, was discovered in his walk-in freezer, a single, impossibly thin blade of ice piercing his heart. Tonight, it was Kiba, the hot-headed leader of a biker gang called the Wild Dogs, who served as distributors for a new, highly addictive synthetic drug. Batman stood on the tiled roof of a derelict bathhouse, the rain plastering his cape to his armor. He watched the scene be Elo through a pair of multi-spectrum binoculars. GCPD cruisers formed a chaotic barricade, their flashing red and blue lights painting the grimy alley in a macabre disco pulse. Kiba and his lieutenants were dead, sprawled around their prized motorcycles. There was no sign of a struggle, no spent shell casings, just bodies, and a chilling, almost artistic, stillness. Each of the victims had the saw-me mark left somewhere at the scene, a small, expertly painted phantom mask, rendered in pitch-black ink. A signature. "It's a ghost," Detective Kakashi Hataki said into his comms unit, his voice a low, weary drawl. He stood in the center of the crime scene, his single visible eye scanning every detail. No entry point, no exit. Just this. From his perch, Naruto listened in on the encrypted police band. Kakashi was one of the few good cops left, a man with a mind as sharp as the kunai he was rumored to still carry from his days in the special forces. But even he was stumped. This killer was different. The city's usual violence was loud, messy, passionate. This was silent, efficient, and cold. It was the work of a professional, an artist whose medium was death. It destabilized the entire criminal ecosystem, creating a power vacuum that was causing bloody turf wars to erupt across the depths. It was chaos, but it felt directed, calculated, and it felt familiar. The movements, the flawless execution, the absolute silence, they echoed the lessons Bruce had drilled into him in the shadowy dojos and forgotten monasteries of his youth. This was the methodology of the League of Assassins, or an organization just like it. He cut the police feed and activated a different program. A series of deep-level scans began to sweep the surrounding city blocks, searching not for heat or sound, but for trace elements. For particulates in the air that didn't belong. He was hunting for the ghost's trail. For hours, he moved through the depths, a wraith flitting from rooftop to rooftop. The district was a labyrinth of narrow alleys, crisscrossing utility cables, and towering, decrepit apartment blocks that leaned against each other for support. He was a creature of this environment, using the steam and shadows as his camouflage. The hunt was on, and for the first time in a long time, Naruto felt the thrill of facing a true peer. This wasn't a thug with a gun or a madman with a gimmick. This was a predator. His system finally got a hit. A minute trace of specialized graphite lubricant, the kind used to silence the moving parts of high-end stealth suits. It was on the fire escape of an old textile factory, 4 blocks from the Kiba crime scene. The trail was faint, almost lost in the deluge, but it was there. He followed it, his pace quickening. The trail led him away from the bustling heart of the depths and towards the industrial zone, a wasteland of rust and decay where factories that had once been the city's lifeblood now stood silent and crumbling. It was a place where things, and people, went to be forgotten. The trail ended at a derelict Shinto shrine, a relic from before the city's modern age, now choked with weeds and decay. Its red torii gate was faded and peeling, and the stone lanterns were covered in moss. It was a place of profound silence, the rain the only sound as it pattered on the sagging temple roof. He knew this was the place. The trap. The ghost was waiting. He entered the shrine's main courtyard not through the gate, but over the wall, landing without a sound in the overgrown garden. His senses were on fire. He could hear the drip of water from a stone basin, smell the wet earth and decaying wood. He felt the weight of an unseen gaze upon him. "You are skilled," a voice, feminine and smooth as silk, echoed from the shadows of the temple's main hall. It held no accent, a voice trained to be placeless, emotionless. "The master will be pleased to know his replacement is not a complete disappointment." From the darkness, a figure emerged. It was a woman, clad in a form-fitting, midnight blue stealth suit that shimmered like wet stone. Her face was covered by a black, featureless mask, the same phantom design from the crime scenes. In her hands, she held 2 kodachi, short swords whose blades seemed to drink the meager light. "The Cage Collective sends its regards," she said, her body settling into a low, predatory stance. "I am Kasumi. I have been sent to test you. To see if the new Bat of Kohona Gotham is worthy of his title. Or if he is merely a pretender." "You've been busy," Batman growled, his own body mirroring hers, his hands open and ready. "Murdering your way through the city's trash. Is that the collective's idea of a test?" "They were insects," she replied, her voice cold. "Their deaths were a message, and a means to draw you out. The only test that matters is you. Show me the strength that defeated the great Bruce Wayne." The misconception was a common one among those who didn't know the truth. The world believed Bruce was dead, and that his killer had taken up the mantle. It was a useful lie. "He wasn't defeated," Batman said. "He vanished." "A convenient distinction," Kasumi hissed, and then she moved. She didn't charge. She exploded. One moment she was 20 feet away, the next she was on him, a whirlwind of dark blue and flashing steel. Her swords were not aimed to kill, but to cripple. A slice at the tendons of his knee. A thrust towards the exposed muscle of his bicep. He met the storm head-on. The fight was a blur of motion, a brutal ballet set to the rhythm of the rain. The courtyard became their arena. The stone lanterns and overgrown bushes their obstacles. His armored gauntlets deflected her blades, creating showers of sparks that lit the darkness in brief, violent flashes. He moved with a grounded, powerful grace. Each block and parry delivered with bone-jarring force. She was faster, more fluid, a river of motion around his rock-solid defense. She was good, incredibly good. Her style was precise, economical. Every movement designed for maximum effect. But she fought with the cold logic of an assassin. She fought to kill. He fought to win. There was a difference. He saw his opening. After a particularly ferocious flurry of attacks, she disengaged, leaping backwards to land on the edge of the stone basin. For a fraction of a second, her posture was open. He threw a trio of flash-bang pellets at her feet. They erupted in a blinding flash of light and a deafening sonic boom. Her training allowed her to recover almost instantly, but almost was all he needed. He surged forward, closing the distance. He didn't attack her, but her weapons. A powerful, open-handed strike slammed into the flat of her right sword, the vibration numbing her hand and sending the blade flying into the darkness. A sweeping kick caught her left wrist, and her second sword clattered to the wet flagstones. Disarmed, she was momentarily stunned. He pressed the advantage. He drove his shoulder into her chest, lifting her off her feet and slamming her back against the thick wooden pillar of the temple hall. The wood groaned under the impact. He pinned her there, his forearm pressed against her throat, his face inches from her masked one. He could feel her heart hammering against his arm. He could hear her ragged, furious breaths. Her body was tense, coiled, ready to keep fighting, even without her weapons. He looked into the blank eyeholes of her mask and saw his own reflection in their dark, polished surface. He could end it. A little more pressure, and her neck would snap. It would be easy. It would be what the world she came from expected. But he was not an assassin. He eased the pressure, just enough for her to draw a shuddering breath. "The test is over," he growled. "You've failed." Through the mask, he felt her glare, a palpable wave of humiliation and rage. "Then kill me," she spat. "That is the price of failure in the collective. Do it." He held her there for another long moment, the rain dripping from his cowl. Then, he did something she never expected. He let her go. He stepped back, leaving her slumped against the pillar, gasping for air. "Death is not the only price of failure," he said. His voice quiet, stripped of the modulator's growl. "Living with it is far harder." He turned and walked over to where her swords had fallen. He picked one up, tested its weight, then deliberately, with a sharp crack, snapped the blade over his knee. He did the same with the second. The sound of the breaking steel was louder than thunder in the sudden silence. He tossed the broken hilts at her feet. "Go back to your masters. Tell them the Batman of Kohona Gotham is not a killer. Tell them their test was flawed. And tell them to stay out of my city." Kasumi stared at the broken swords, then up at the towering figure before her. He had defeated her, disarmed her, and then shown her mercy. Mercy was a concept that did not exist in her world. It was a weakness, a flaw. Yet, from him, it felt like an act of profound, terrifying strength. It was a power she had never encountered, and it shook her to the very core of her being. She had been trained to understand violence and death. She had no frame of reference for this. He turned his back on her, a gesture of ultimate dominance, and walked towards the crumbling Torii gate. "Why?" she whispered, the Ingle word a raw sound of confusion and disbelief. He paused at the gate, his silhouette framed against the misty, neon-drenched sky. "Because this city has enough ghosts," he said, without looking back. "It doesn't need another." And then he was gone, melting back into the shadows and the rain, leaving Kasumi alone in the ruins of the ancient shrine, with the broken pieces of her swords and the tattered fragments of her entire worldview. A seed had been planted in the barren ground of her soul, a seed of respect, of fear, and of a strange, unsettling fascination with the man who had defeated her not by taking her life, but by giving it back to her. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Diplomat and the Demon. The air at the executive airfield on Kohona Gotham's west side was crisp and clean, scrubbed bed by the afternoon rain and the advanced atmospheric processors that serviced the city's elite. A private Kiri Tech VTOL craft, designed to look like a metallic dragonfly, settled onto the landing pad with a barely audible hum. Its surface shimmering with an active camouflage that bled away to reveal a hull of polished, sea-green alloy. This was technology a decade ahead of anything else in the sky. A clear and deliberate statement of power from the city-state of Kurigakure. Naruto Wayne stood on the wet tarmac, a black umbrella held over him by a stoic member of his security staff. He wore a Brioni suit of slate gray that fit him like a second skin, projecting an image of casual, almost indifferent, wealth. He was here as the city's unofficial business ambassador, the face of the corpor. Power that kept Kohona Gotham's heart beating. It was a role he played with practiced ease. The VTOL's ramp lowered, and the diplomatic party from the mist descended. At its head was a woman who almonded attention as effortlessly as the tide commands the shore. Mei Terumi was taller than he expected, with fiery, auburn hair intricately styled in a way that was both elegant and severe. Her eyes were a piercing shade of emerald green, and they held a sharp, appraising intelligence that missed nothing. She moved with a liquid grace, her bespoke dress the color of deep-sea coral, a stark, vibrant splash of life against the city's monochrome palette. "Mr. Wayne," she said as she approached, her voice a melodic alto with a hint of playful authority. "How good of you to grace us with your presence. I was half expecting the city to send a functionary with a gift basket, and miss the opportunity to welcome our most distinguished guests myself, Madam Ambassador." Naruto replied, his smile charming and perfectly calibrated. He stepped forward, taking her offered hand. Her skin was warm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Kohona Gotham may be a city of shadows, but we like to think our hospitality is a ray of sunshine." "A charming sentiment," Mei countered, her lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Though I've heard the shadows are where the real business gets done. Tell me, are you as formidable in the boardroom as your city's reputation is in the back alleys?" The game had begun already. "I hold my own," Naruto said with a self-deprecating shrug. "I find a winning smile and an open checkbook can solve most problems. I'm sure your methods in Kiri are far more sophisticated." Her laugh was a low, throaty sound. "Sophistication is simply another word for efficiency, Mr. Wayne. Something I trust we can both appreciate." She introduced her two primary guards, men who radiated a quiet lethality. One was a towering young man with a nervous disposition but eyes that bespoke a swordsman's discipline, Chojuro. The other was older, his face weathered, a high-tech eye patch covering his right eye, a man named Ao. They were professionals, and their gazes swept the area, cataloging threats Naruto had already identified and dismissed an hour ago. As they were escorted to a waiting convoy of armored limousines, Mei walked beside Naruto, her presence a magnetic field of power and poise. "The Amaterasu Project," she said, her tone shifting from playful to direct. "Your joint venture with the Hyuga Zaibatsu is the primary reason for these treaty talks. Here, I has a vested interest in the stability of your new energy grid. And an even greater interest in licensing the technology for yourselves, I imagine," Naruto replied smoothly. "As I said, Mr. Wayne," Mei smiled, her emerald eyes glinting, Efficiency. This woman was a shark, and he was swimming in her ocean. But he had a secret. He wasn't just a swimmer. He was the Leviathan that owned the depths. The Starlight Ballroom on the top floor of Wayne Tower was a breathtaking cathedral of glass and light. The ceiling was an armored dome that offered a panoramic, 360-degree view of the glittering, rain-swept city below. Crystal chandeliers, shaped like weeping willows, cast a warm, golden light on the hundreds of guests mingling on the marble floor. A string quartet played a hauntingly beautiful piece in the corner, their music a delicate counterpoint to the low hum of powerful conversations. Naruto was in his element, the perfect host. He moved through the crowd, a word here, a shared laugh there. His charisma a tangible force. But all the while, he was working. The cufflinks on his shirt were wide-band audio receivers. The contact lenses in his eyes provided a subtle augmented reality overlay, identifying guests and flagging potential security risks. His focus, however, kept returning to Mai Terumi. She was holding court near the central fountain, effortlessly charming a group of grizzled industrialists. She was a master of this environment, using her wit and beauty as both a shield and a weapon. He found himself drawn to her, a moth to a brilliant, dangerous flame. He made his way to her side, offering a fresh glass of champagne. Enjoying the view, Madam Ambassador. It's imposing, she said, turning to look out at the sprawling cityscape. A monument to ambition. It tells a story of power, wealth, and a profound darkness just beneath the surface. It's a city that suits you. I'm merely a caretaker, he deflected. Are you? She challenged, turning her full attention on him. Her gaze was intense, analytical. I think not. A caretaker maintains. You, Mr. Wayne, you build, and you protect what you build with a ferocity I find quite fascinating. Before he could respond, a subtle warning chimed in his ear, an alert from his security network. 3 members of the catering staff had deviated from their assigned routes. Their heart rates were elevated. His contact lenses highlighted them in a faint red aura that only he could see. They were converging on Mei's position from 3 different directions. Anti-Kiri extremists. The political situation was more volatile than the official reports suggested. Panic was not an option. He couldn't reveal himself. He had to operate within the mask of Naruto Wayne. You know, he said to Mei, his voice light and conversational. My father always said the key to a successful party was managing the flow. It's all about timing. With that, he turned, seemingly stumbling. His arm bumped the tray of the first would-be assassin, who was approaching with a platter of hors d'oeuvres. Champagne flutes and canapes went flying. In the ensuing chaos, as the man bent down, Naruto's hand shot out, a blur of motion too fast to follow. His thumb and forefinger found the pressure point below the man's ear. A single, hard pinch. The man's eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward, unconscious, his collapse looking like a clumsy fall amidst the mess. Oh, dear, so clumsy of me, Naruto announced to the room with a charmingly embarrassed laugh. Security rushed in to handle the fainting waiter. The second attacker, seeing his partner go down, grew bold. He abandoned his cover, pulling a ceramic knife from his jacket as he pushed through the distracted crowd. He was still 10 feet away. Naruto acted instantly. He grabbed Mei's arm. Dance with me, Madam Ambassador, he said, pulling her onto the small dance floor just as the quartet shifted to a waltz. He spun her around, his body a shield between her and the approaching threat. The move was so smooth, so unexpected, it looked like a spontaneous, romantic gesture. As he twirled her, his leg shot out in a seemingly accidental misstep, his heel connecting perfectly with the ankle of the third assassin, who was trying to circle around them. The man went down in a heap, his leg broken. The second assassin was almost upon them. Naruto spun Mei one last time, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her into the path of the oncoming man. It was a perfect interception. The assassin, unable to stop his momentum, collided with one of Mei's own guards, Ao, who had been moving to intercept. The old soldier reacted instantly, disarming and disabling the man with brutal, close-quarters efficiency. It was all over in less than 10 seconds. 3 threats neutralized. The partygoers were startled, but the music never stopped. The security detail was so efficient that most people assumed it was just a minor disturbance. Naruto released Mei, a sheepish grin on his face. My apologies, Madam Ambassador. I seem to have 2 left feet tonight. Mei Terumi stared at him, her chest rising and falling. Her face was pale, but her emerald eyes were blazing. She had seen it, all of it, the accidental spill, the misstep, the dance. She saw the impossible timing, the surgical precision. She saw the predator beneath the playboy. Mr. Wayne, she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. For a man with 2 left feet, you move with a truly astonishing grace. Later that night, the Kiri embassy was under siege. The building, a sleek fortress of sea glass and steel on the city's diplomatic row, was surrounded. A team of 20 mercenaries, clad in black tactical gear and armed with military-grade pulse rifles, was attempting a full frontal assault. Explosions rocked the manicured gardens, and the air was filled with the hiss of energy bolts impacting the embassy's kinetic shields. But a demon had descended to protect the diplomats. The Batman hit them like a hurricane. He dropped from the sky, his cape spread wide, and landed on the roof of their armored transport vehicle, caving it in. He moved through them not as a man fighting for his life, but as an apex predator culling a herd. This was not the subtle, graceful dance of the ballroom. This was raw, untamed, and terrifyingly efficient. He used the environment, his gadgets, and his own body as weapons. A smoke pellet filled the garden with a thick, disorienting fog. The mercenaries, switching to thermal vision, suddenly found their world lit up by a dozen small heat sources, batarangs with chemical heating elements, thrown to create a field of ghost targets. He struck from the confusion. An arm broken here, a leg shattered there. He used his grapple to swing from a statue, his TS connecting with a mercenary's helmet with enough force to send the man flying 10 feet. He moved with a brutal, relentless rhythm, each strike designed to incapacitate, to neutralize, to instill absolute terror. In 90 seconds, 20 armed professionals were a groaning, broken mess on the embassy's lawn. He stood in the center of the carnage, the rain washing the grime from his armor, his white lenses glowing in the darkness. He was a creature of myth, a protector born from the city's deepest shadows. I had assumed the welcoming committee would be more welcoming. He turned. May Tear. Umi stood on a high balcony overlooking the garden. She was wrapped in a silk robe, a drink in her hand, looking completely unfazed by the violence that had just unfolded at her doorstep. Her 2 guards stood behind her, their weapons lowered, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. Batman fired his grapple and ascended to the balcony, landing silently a few feet from her. Your enemies are persistent, he said, his voice the low growl of the bat. They are also predictable, she replied, taking a sip of her drink. She studied him, her gaze traveling over the sharp lines of his cowl, the powerful set of his shoulders. There was no fear in her eyes, only a deep, profound curiosity. The city's protector, or is it its king? I'm not a king. No, she countered, taking a step closer. She was not intimidated by his presence, she seemed energized by it. You command the shadows. You move with a power that makes armies irrelevant. You operate on a level that transcends politics and laws. If that is not a king, what is? Quote. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her emerald eyes. That performance at the gala was a masterpiece, by the way, she said, her voice dropping to an intimate murmur. The clumsy billionaire and the demon in the dark. 2 sides of the same, extraordinary coin. Tell me, Mr. Wayne, which one is the real mask? He remained silent, his cowl betraying no emotion. It doesn't matter, she continued, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. I am not interested in the boy who inherited a fortune. I am interested in the man who forged an empire from the darkness. A man of power, of strategy, of will. Her gaze was bold, unwavering, an open invitation. Kiri needs powerful allies, and I find myself drawn to power. She reached out and traced the edge of the bat-fox symbol on his chest with a single, perfectly manicured finger. It was a gesture of breathtaking audacity, an acknowledgement of a shared world of power and intrigue that few could ever comprehend. A new, dangerous, and exhilarating piece had just been placed on the board. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. A Symphony of Chaos. It began at precisely 7:07 p.m. One moment, The city was a cacophony of normal, organized noise. The next, it was united in a single, horrifying broadcast. Every screen, from the colossal holographic Geish, as advertising synth sake in the upper wards to the cracked, flickering displays in the grimiest noodle bars of the depths, went black. For a heartbeat of shared digital silence, the city held its breath. Then, a face flickered into existence. It was painted dead white, with a jagged, blood-red smile carved across its cheeks and greasy, toxic green hair falling into its dark, sunken eyes. The eyes were the worst part. They were pits of manic, intelligent glee, dancing with a light that suggested a complete and terrifying disconnect from reality. He was sitting in a garish, purple chair, a parody of a king's throne. "Good evening, Kohona Gotham." The face chirped, its voice a bizarre, lilting tenor that could shift from a playful whisper to a shrieking cackle in an instant. "This is your new favorite host, Joker. Welcoming you to the premiere episode of our new hit game show, Smile, You're on Camera." The camera panned out, revealing a figure bound and gagged in a chair opposite him. His face was bruised, his eyes wide with terror. It was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the city's elderly and much respected mayor. Panic, a cold and greasy wave, washed over the city. "Now, our esteemed contestant is a little tied up at the moment." The Joker giggled, tapping the mayor's cheek with a long, purple-gloved finger. "So you, the lovely people of this oh-so-serious city, will be playing for him. The rules are simple. I'll ask a riddle. You have 5 minutes to call in the correct answer to the number on your screen. Get it right, and we move to the next round. Get it wrong." He trailed off, pulling out an oversized revolver with a comically long barrel. "And our dear mayor gets a little constructive criticism." He pressed the muzzle of the gun to Sarutobi's temple. The mayor flinched violently. "Let's begin." The Joker sang. "First riddle. I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. What am I?" "You're on the clock, Gotham." Tick-tock, tick-tock. In the Batcave, Naruto watched the broadcast on the main screen, a wall of 100 different news feeds and camera angles. His hands were clenched into fists so tight that the advanced polymer of his gloves creaked in protest. He stood motionless, a statue of contained fury. "Signal trace," he commanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Already on it, Master Naruto," Iruka replied, his fingers flying across a holographic console. The broadcast is being routed through no less than 5,000 hijacked proxy servers, bounced off a defunct Wayne Enterprises satellite, and filter through a military-grade encryption key I've never seen before. It's perfect, untraceable, facial recognition, voice analysis. "Nothing," Iruka said, his voice grim. "No records, no matches. His biometrics don't exist in any database on the planet. He's a ghost." The Joker was a phantom in the machine, his technical skill as flawless as his madness. This wasn't some brutish thug or greedy corporation. This was something new, a philosopher of chaos. "He isn't after money," Naruto muttered, his eyes narrowed, analyzing the Joker's every micro-expression. "He's not after territory. He's a performer. The whole city is his stage." On the screen, the 5-minute timer ran out. A cacophony of wrong answers had flooded the network. A map, a globe, a drawing. The Joker sighed dramatically. "Ooh, so close, but so very, very wrong." He tutted. He cocked the revolver. The sound was deafening in the cave. He pulled the trigger. Instead of a bullet, a small flag popped out of the barrel, bearing the word, "Bang." The Joker roared with laughter, a high, unhinged sound that scraped at the nerves. Mayor Sarutobi sagged in his chair, half fainting with relief. "Just kidding. First round's a freebie," the Joker cackled. "But don't worry, the real fun is just beginning." Naruto turned away from the screen, his mind racing. He couldn't punch a broadcast signal. He couldn't intimidate an ideology. Bruce's methods, the rigid, predictable logic of crime and punishment, were useless here. The Joker wasn't playing by any known rules. He was fighting a war of ideas, and Naruto was bringing fists to a battle of the mind. Frustration, a rare and bitter poison, burned in his gut. He needed a new weapon. A different kind of mind. He knew what he had to do. It was a risk, a colossal one. It broke every protocol Bruce had ever established. But Bruce had never faced anything like this. "Baruka," he said, his voice hard with resolve. "Get the Uzumaki ready. I'm bringing back a guest." Dr. Harley Quinn was working late in her office at the KGCFCE, surrounded by stacks of books and psychological profiles. The Joker's broadcast was playing on her monitor, but she wasn't watching it with fear. She was watching with a terrifying, professional fascination, scribbling notes, analyzing his speech patterns, the rhythm of his madness. A sudden gust of wind blew the papers off her desk. She looked up, startled, to find her window wide open, the rain whipping into the room. And there, standing in the opening, silhouetted against the stormy sky, was the Batman. She didn't scream. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her mind, always the analyst, took over. He was larger than the news reports suggested, an imposing figure of shadow and armor. He was utterly silent. "You're making a draft," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Dr. Quinzel," the modulated voice growled. "I need your help." 10 minutes later, Harleen was in the passenger seat of the most advanced vehicle she had ever seen, tearing through the city's hidden underbelly at impossible speeds. The journey was a silent, terrifying blur of darkness and roaring engines. It ended when the vehicle burst through a subterranean waterfall and into a vast, technologically advanced cavern that took her breath away. She stepped out into the Batcave, her clinical mind struggling to process the sheer scale of it all. The fus ion of ancient geology and futuristic technology. The giant computer. The armory. The empty case holding an older, battle-scarred batsuit. It wasn't just a base. It was a monument to a single, obsessive mind. It was the most fascinating psychological profile she had ever encountered. "Wow," she breathed, a small, unprofessional sound of pure awe. His file at the facility doesn't do him justice. She wasn't talking about Batman. She was talking about his predecessor. "The man on the screen," Batman said, gesturing to the main console where the Joker's broadcast was still playing. "I need to know how he thinks." Harleen's focus snapped back. The awe was replaced by a giddy, intellectual fire. This was the ultimate puzzle. She walked over to the console, her eyes scanning the data Batman had already compiled. "Okay," she said, "all business. Let's dance." For the next hour, they worked. It was a symphony of deduction. He provided the cold, hard data, she provided the psychological framework. "He's not insane," she said, pacing in front of the screen. "Not in a clinical sense. This isn't a fragmented personality or a psychotic break. This is something else. A kind of hyper-sanity. He sees all the world's hypocrisy. All the flimsy rules we build our lives on, and he sees it as a joke. A punchline. He's a nihilist," Batman growled. "More than that," she countered, her mind racing. "A nihilist is passive. He's an evangelist. He doesn't just believe in chaos, he wants to convert us all. This game show isn't about killing the mayor. It's a sermon. He's trying to prove that in the end, everyone is just as ugly and chaotic as he is." They deconstructed his every word, his body language, the theatrical set he'd built. Batman was stunned by the speed and clarity of her thought. She saw things he never would. Connections buried in layers of symbolism and performance art. They moved in perfect sync, his grim logic and her intuitive genius, building a profile of their ghost. "The riddles," she said suddenly, her eyes lighting up. "He's not just picking them at random. Listen to the phrasing. I have cities but no houses. That's from a classic geography primer. But the second one, about the man who shaves several times a day and still has a beard. He's a barber. That's from a vaudeville routine, popular in the 1920s. Batman brought up the transcript, his mind making the connections. The props, the set, it's all old-fashioned. The gun with the bang flag, the slapstick humor." "Exactly," Harleen exclaimed. "He's obsessed with a bygone era of performance. He's not just a terrorist. He's a theatrical historian. He's hiding his clues not in code, but in context." Working on her theory, they analyzed the cultural and historical references. They were disparate, chaotic. But Harleen found the thread that connected them all. Every riddle, every prop, was a direct reference to an attraction or performance that had once been featured at the Laughing Fox amusement park. A massive, sprawling park on the city's north side, co-funded by the Uzumaki clan decades ago, it had been shut down for 30 years after a tragic accident. It was now a wasteland of rust and decay. The broadcast is a distraction, Batman said, already moving towards the Uzumaki. The real show is at the park. Be careful, Harleen warned, her voice tight with a new, personal concern. For him, the punchline is everything. This is a trap. I know, he growled, the vehicle's canopy hissing shut. I'm counting on it. The Laughing Fox amusement park was a graveyard of joy. The rain fell on the peeling, grinning faces of cartoon mascots, their eyes dead and hollow. A skeletal Ferris wheel groaned in the wind, its empty cars swaying like hanged men. Distorted calliope music, tinny and warped, played from hidden speakers, a funeral dirge for a child's dream. Batman moved through the decay like a wraith. He found Mayor Sarutobi in the park's main fun house, in the center of a dizzying, disorienting hall of mirrors. He was tied to a chair, a complex-looking bomb strapped to his chest, a digital timer counting down from 60 seconds. The Joker's laughter erupted from the speakers, echoing off the countless mirrored surfaces. Welcome, Batsy. So glad you could make it for our grand finale. Now for the final riddle. How is a bat like a writing desk? Answer wrong, and the W. Whole city gets to see what a mayor looks like on the inside. No pressure. Batman ignored the taunt, his mind working. It was a classic, nonsensical riddle. The answer was that there was no answer. A philosophical trap. He sprinted towards the mayor, his gauntlet already working to analyze the bomb's mechanism. But as he ran, the floor beneath him shifted. The mirrors began to rotate, gliding on silent tracks. The walls of the maze reconfiguring around him. His own reflection, 1,000 dark, demonic bats, moved with him, mocking him. The Joker's laughter grew louder, more manic. Wrong way, bats. You're trying to solve the puzzle. But you are the puzzle. Batman was trapped. Every path he took, the mirrors shifted to block him. He was being herded, played with. He glanced at the timer. 30 seconds. He stopped, realizing his mistake. He was playing the Joker's game. He had to break it. He looked at his reflection, at the angry, determined face behind the cowl. Then he looked past it, at the complex machinery behind the two-way mirrors. He threw a powerful punch, not at a path, but at a wall. His armored fist shattered the mirror, revealing the whirring gears and servos behind it. He smashed through the mechanism, forcing a new path. He shattered another mirror, and another, ignoring the disorienting reflections, forging a straight, brutal line through the Joker's elegant trap. He reached the mayor with 5 seconds to spare. His fingers flew over the bomb's interface, but it was a decoy. The timer hit 0, and instead of an explosion, a shower of confetti and a puff of pink smoke erupted from the device. A small speaker on it chirped, "You're it." The lights in the hall of mirrors went out, plunging him into absolute darkness. The Joker's laughter stopped. An eerie silence fell. Then, a single screen flickered to life on the wall in front of him. It showed the Joker's face, this time in crystal clear high definition. He wasn't laughing anymore. He was smiling, a slow, intimate, terrible smile. "Bravo," the Joker's voice whispered from the screen, calm and conversational. "Truly, a stunning debut. But that was just the opening act, Batsy. Just a little. Getting to know you, fun. The real show, the real joke, is just about to begin. And I promise you, it's a killer." The screen went black, leaving Batman standing in the darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of his own reflection. The scent of candy floss and ozone in the air. He had saved the mayor, but he had lost the battle. He had walked right into the Joker's theater, and in doing so, had become the star of the show. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Forge of the Bat. The Batcave was a tomb of silent frustration. On the central diagnostic platform, the Batsuit stood like a dark effigy, its surface C. Rolling with red and yellow lines of holographic code indicating microfractures, EMP scarring, and chemical residue from the Joker's confetti bomb. The damage was superficial, but the implications were profound. His armor, a marvel of engineering designed to withstand bullets and explosions, had been flustered and functionally compromised by a series of elaborate, non-lethal pranks. Naruto sat before the main console, replaying the footage from the Hall of Mirrors for the 20th time. He watched himself smash through the Joker's elegant trap with brute force, a bull in a china shop of insanity. He had won the engagement. But it felt like a strategic loss. He never tried to harm me, Naruto said to the empty cave, his voice a low murmur. Not directly. Everything was designed to disorient, to mock. To make my own technology a liability. The smoke pellets, designed for cover, were useless in a room of shifting mirrors. The grapnel line, designed for ascension, had no purchase. The suit's threat detection software, programmed to identify weapons and hostile intent, was silent. The Joker hadn't registered as a threat, he'd registered as a prankster, a ghost in the machine whose danger was philosophical. Master Bruce designed this arsenal to fight a war against predictable forces, Haruka said, placing a steaming mug of coffee on the console. Greed, revenge, ambition. This is something else entirely. It's an assault on logic itself. Naruto took the mug, the heat a welcome sensation against his cold gloves. Logic is still the key, he countered, his eyes fixed on the screen. His chaos is meticulously designed. It has rules. I'm just playing with the wrong rulebook. He looked from the battle-scarred suit to the schematics of his own gear. My equipment is a hammer. I need a scalpel, a key. I need new tools. He stood, a new resolve hardening his features. I'm going down to the forge. Haruka nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. I shall inform Ms. Higurashi to expect company, and perhaps order more coffee. Deep beneath Wayne Tower, several sub-levels below the Batcave, lay the Applied Sciences Division. It was a place of sterile, organized brilliance, a stark contrast to the cavern's gothic gloom. Known affectionately as the Forge, it was a sprawling complex of clean rooms, fabrication bays, and design studios, all humming with the quiet energy of creation. This was the engine room of Batman's War, and its chief engineer was Tenten Higurashi. Naruto found her in the main R&D lab, a vast, white space where holographic schematics floated in the air like captive nebulae. She was leaning over a disassembled pulse engine, her face smudged with grease, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun from which several strands had escaped. A pair of augmented reality goggles were pushed up onto her forehead, and she was arguing with a robotic armature about recalibrating a magnetic containment field. No, you oversized paperweight, the particle flow is still off by 0.03%. Run the diagnostic again, and this time, try using your multi-trillion-dollar processing core. She commanded the machine. She didn't look up as Naruto approached, her focus absolute. Tough day at the office? He asked, his voice laced with an amusement only she was ever allowed to hear. She glanced over, and a genuine, unguarded smile broke across her face. Naruto, don't tell me you broke another grapple launcher. That's the third one this month. I'm going to start charging you for parts. It's worse this time, he said, pulling up a stool next to her workbench. The ease between them was a language all its own, forged over years of shared secrets and late nights. I need to upgrade the whole dictionary. He laid it out for her, omitting the Joker's identity but describing the tactical problem. A foe who used theatricality as a weapon. Who could turn any piece of civic infrastructure into a death trap? Who fought with ideas, not fists? Tenten listened, her sharp, practical mind absorbing every detail. She wiped her hands on an already filthy rag, her playful demeanor gone, replaced by a focused intensity that mirrored his own. So, your problem isn't the hardware, she summarized, tapping a stylus against her chin. It's the philosophy. Your gear is designed for escalation control. You need de-escalation tools. You need countermeasures. Foe are things that aren't technically weapons. She began pacing. Sonic emitters tuned to induce nausea, not unconsciousness. A grapnel line with a multi-spectrum anchor that can latch onto glass or even unpolarized light projections. EMP charges that can be calibrated to target a single circuit board from 50 yards. We need to think like a stage magician, not a soldier. He nodded, a wave of relief washing over him. She got it, instantly. I was also thinking about the suit itself. It's too rigid. I need something more versatile, something that can adapt on the fly. A modular system, she said, her eyes lighting up. Plates that can be swapped out. A power distribution network that can redirect energy from motor assists to sensor suites in a microsecond. She walked over to a holographic design table, waving her hands. A 3D wireframe of his batsuit appeared between them. Okay, Genius. Let's get to work. They fell into a familiar rhythm, a dance of intellect and innovation. He would describe a field scenario, a tactical problem he'd faced, and she would translate it into schematics and engineering solutions. Their minds worked in perfect harmony, his battlefield experience and our technical brilliance merging into a single, creative force. As they worked on a new, silent deployment system for his cape, the smell of ozone and hot metal filled the air. It reminded him of another time. He was 12 years old, a sullen, angry orphan lost in the cavernous halls of Wayne Manor. Bruce was a distant, brooding figure, and Alfred Pennyworth's kindness felt like a cage of pity. Dee found solace in an old workshop Bruce rarely used. He was trying to fix a broken music box, but his frustration was getting the better of him, his small hands too clumsy. "You're overloading the primary gear," a voice said from the doorway. He looked up to see a girl his own age, with dark hair tied in two neat buns. She was a ward of the Wayne Foundation, a prodigy in the youth engineering program. "You need to bypass the governor if you want to reset the timing spring." He scowled. "I didn't ask for your help." She ignored his anger, walking over and pointing with a small, grease-stained finger. "It's not about asking. It's about fixing what's broken." She didn't look at him with pity. She looked at the music box, at the problem. For the first time since his parents' death, someone was looking at him like he was a partner. Not a tragedy. They fixed the music box together. They had been fixing things ever since. Naruto. Tenten's voice pulled him back to the present. "You with me?" "Yeah," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Just thinking. We need to build it all from scratch. A new composite for the armor plating. Lighter, more responsive." For the next 72 hours, the forge became their entire world. They worked in a blur of activity, fueled by Iruka's steady supply of coffee and sandwiches. They 3D printed new armor components, coded new software for the cowl's sensor suite, and hand-assembled the new multi-spectrum grapnel launchers. In the quiet moments, between running diagnostics and calibrating micro-servos, they talked. They talked about everything and nothing. Their conversation the comfortable, seamless dialogue of two people who knew each other's souls. In the shared passion of creation, the unspoken affection between them was a tangible presence in the room, as real as the humming machinery around them. On the fourth day, as Tenten was putting the finishing touches on the new suit's power core, a klaxon blared through the lab. "What is that?" she asked, startled. On the lab's main monitor, a citywide emergency broadcast appeared. The Kohona Gotham Serpent Line, the maglev bullet train that was the city's main transportation artery, was in trouble. The image showed panicked passengers, the train's interior lights flickering. The Joker's grinning face materialized over the footage. "Attention, commuters," his voice sang, laced with digital distortion. "Due to unforeseen hilarity, your train has no brakes. And we're adding a little bonus excitement. We're going faster. Please enjoy the scenic route to oblivion. Next stop. The end of the line. Choo-choo." Naruto looked at the new, untested suit standing on its charging cradle. He looked at Tenten, whose face was a mask of grim determination. "Looks like we've got a field test," he said. The Uzumaki screamed through the city streets, a black streak of focused purpose. Tenten's voice was in his ear, crisp and clear from her new command station in the forge. "He's overriding the Central Transit Command," she said, her fingers flying across a keyboard. "The train is accelerating past maximum safe velocity. You have 4 minutes until it reaches the terminus at Central S. Station and becomes a 200-ton missile. Get me alongside it," Naruto ordered. "Clearing a path now," she replied. Traffic lights turned green before him. Blockades retracted into the street. She was his ghost in the city's machine. Opening the way, he saw the train ahead, a silver serpent snaking between the skyscrapers on its elevated track. He gunned the engine, the Uzumaki roaring up a service ramp and onto a parallel maintenance road. He was gaining on it. "I'm going to have to board," he said. "He's anticipating that," Tenten warned. "I'm detecting high-voltage surges across the train's outer hull." "Touch it, and you're fried," noted. He pulled alongside the driverless front car. I need a window." "There are no windows on the front car." "Then make me one." "On it." AAS. Schematic of the train appeared in his visor, a section of the hull highlighted in green. The panel 2 meters ahead of you is a maintenance hatch. Its magnetic locks are controlled by an independent circuit. I can overload it, but only for a second. Get ready. He stood up in the Uzumaki's open cockpit, bracing himself against the incredible wind. 3, 2, 1, now. Tenten's voice commanded. The panel on the train sparked and blew outwards. Naruto fired his new grapnel line. The multi-spectrum anchor slammed into the interior wall and locked on. He was pulled from the Uzumaki, swinging through the air in a dizzying arc before crashing through the opening and into the train's control cabin. He landed hard, rolling to his feet. The Joker's face was laughing at him from every monitor. "Welcome aboard the crazy train, Bats." Quote. He ignored it, lunging for the manual brake system. It was useless. The console was a molten, smoking wreck. The brakes had been physically destroyed. Plan B, he grunted into his comms. "I was afraid you'd say that." Her voice came back, tight with stress. "The emergency decoupling for the cars is still active, but the Joker has it locked behind a rotating encryption key. I can break it, but I need you to manually interface at 3 separate junctions along the train's spine." "On my way." He kicked open the door to the passenger cars and was met with a scene of pure chaos. The Joker's traps were everywhere. Doors slammed shut, floors became electrified, and automated luggage racks swung down like battering rams. But this time, he was ready. "Surge on the floor panels ahead," Tenten warned. "I see it," he replied, firing a grapnel line at the ceiling and swinging over the deadly trap. He moved through the train with a relentless purpose, his new, more flexible suit allowing him a freedom of movement he'd never had before. He was a blur of black, and with Tenten as his eyes and ears, they were a perfect, synchronized unit. He reached He last junction and plugged his gauntlet in. "Now, 10, breaking the code." "Got it." Cars decoupling. With a loud groan, the passenger cars disengaged, their own emergency brakes kicking in. But the front car, where he was, continued to hurtle forward, still a massive, unstoppable projectile. It was lighter, but still moving too fast. "It's not enough," he said, seeing the lights of Central Station rushing towards them. "I'm not going to stop in time." "The new grapnel lines," Tenten said, her voice a desperate spark of inspiration. "The high-tension ones. The magnetic anchors. Can the suit's power core handle the kinetic load of a full stop? We're about to find out." He smashed through the side of the car, climbing onto the roof. The wind was a physical wall, trying to tear him away. He fired the new grapnel launchers from both gauntlets. 2 high-tension cables shot out, their multi-spectrum heads anchoring deep into the reinforced concrete of the neighboring skyscrapers. He did it again. 4 cables, 2 on each side. He dug his boots into the train's roof, rerouting all of the suit's power to the gauntlets and his own anchor points. "Hit it." "Anchors locked," Tenten confirmed. The cables went taut. The strain was unimaginable. The suit's AI screamed warnings in his ear about power overloads and structural failure. Every muscle in his body screamed as he became the nexus point. The living brake for a speeding bullet train. Metal shrieked, sparks rained down from the cables, and the train's momentum fought against him with apocalyptic force. With a final, deafening groan, the train car slid to a halt. Its nose hanging mere inches over the edge of the broken track at the terminus. Silence. Naruto collapsed to his knees on the roof, his entire body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. In his ear, he could hear Tenten's ragged, relieved breaths. "Naruto. Status," she whispered. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "A little tired," he rasped. "You," he heard, a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I need more coffee." A genuine smile touched his lips. He looked out at the city he had just saved, the lights of Wayne Tower visible in the distance. He knew that she was there, watching over him. They had built the tools together. And together, they had won. The victory was not his alone. It was theirs, and in the quiet hum of his calm link, in the shared silence of a crisis averted, their bond was forged anew, no longer just friendship, but something stronger, deeper, and infinitely more profound. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Convergence in Crimson. The Batcave had transformed from a command center into a war room. The central holographic map of Kohona Gotham was a bleeding tapestry of crimson alerts. It was no longer a matter of single, theatrical crimes. The Joker's chaos had metastasized. It was a plague spreading through the city's digital and societal veins. A flash crash on the stock exchange, targeting tech and energy sectors. A log. IC bomb that had reversed the flow of the city's water reclamation system. Coordinated riots erupting between 3 major gangs in the depths, sparked by anonymous data dumps of fabricated evidence. Each crisis was a brushfire. And Naruto was the only firefighter. He was everywhere and nowhere, a dark phantom stretched to the breaking point. His new modular suit, so effective against the train, LT inadequate against a city turning on itself. He was chasing symptoms, while the disease itself, the grinning, cackling virus of the Joker's will, remained untouchable. He stood before the map, watching his city burn. And for the first time since taking the cowl, he felt the icy grip of impending failure. He could not be in 4 places at once. Hinata. The main trading floor of the Hyuga Zaibatsu was a symphony of managed panic. Men and women in sharp, conservative suits moved with frantic precision, their voices a low, urgent hum as they barked orders into comms units. On the massive data walls that lined the room, stock tickers plunged like falling knives, all of them colored a bloody red. Hinata Hyuga stood on the raised observation deck, a silent island in the hurricane. While her father, Hiyashi, and her cousin, Neji, snapped commands, their faces tight with fury at this unprecedented assault on their financial empire, she saw something they didn't. Her Byakugan was active, not in the traditional sense of seeing through walls, but as a heightened state of perception, allowing her to see the flow and pattern of the data itself. To everyone else, the market's behavior was chaos. To her, it was a beautifully constructed, venomous algorithm. It was 1,000 tiny, insignificant sell orders, timed to the microsecond, creating a ripple of fear that triggered the automated trading systems to panic. It was a ghost, a digital phantom, making the market devour itself. And at its heart, she could perceive a single, recurring signature in the code, a digital watermark, as elegant and mocking as a smile. "It is not a panic," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "It is an attack, a directed one." Neji scoffed, turning to face her from the floor below. "State the obvious, sister. Our analysts are working on it." "Your analysts are looking for a sledgehammer," Hinata countered, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "This was done with a needle. The source isn't another corporation. It's a single entity, hiding behind a fractal network of shell corporations and dead accounts." She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that no traditional corporate response could fight this. They were trying to build a dam against a tide of ghosts. There was only one person in the city who hunted ghosts. Taking a deep breath, she walked away from the Ling and into the solitude of her private office. Accessing a heavily encrypted messaging app on her personal datapad, one she had installed after her encounter with the Batman, she composed a message. It was the biggest risk of her life. An act of supreme betrayal to her family and a desperate leap of faith. She attached a single data packet containing the core of the attack algorithm she had isolated. A key that only one mind in the city would know how to use. She addressed it to Naruto Wayne. Kasumi. Rain and neon bled together on the cracked pavement of the alley below. Kasumi knelt on the edge of a tenement roof in the depths. A motionless gargoyle of dark fabric and cold purpose. The air smelled of wet asphalt, cheap ramen, and blood. The depths were tearing themselves apart. The wild dogs, the Inuzuka clan, and the Saru syndicate were locked in a brutal 3-way war. The Joker's data dump had been a masterpiece of psychological warfare, flawlessly faked evidence implicating EAC group in the assassinations she herself had committed weeks ago. He had taken her precise, surgical work and used it as a spark to light a forest fire. It was an insult, a profound violation of her code. Her work had been clean, honorable in its own dark way. This was a chaotic, pointless slaughter. It was dishonorable. Watching the mindless violence below, she felt a cold, alien anger. This Joker fought with no principles, no respect for the craft. He was a child throwing firecrackers into a munitions depot. She could not stop this alone. To cut the head off one gang would only empower the others. She needed to stop the war itself. She needed a strategist, a symbol. She needed the only person in this city who had ever shown her an alternative to the collective's simple binary of success or death. She reached into a hidden pocket of her suit and pulled out a single, heavy coin. It was made of a dark, non-reflective metal, one side stamped with the bat-fox symbol, the other smooth. It was a shadow marker, a tool of last resort he had left her with. Activating it was a submission, an admission that she needed help. For a trained assassin of the Cage Collective, it was the ultimate humiliation. She looked down at the burning streets, at the pointless, ugly chaos, and crushed the coin in her palm. A silent, encrypted signal, keyed to a single receiver, pulsed out into the night. It was not a request. It was an alarm. The Kiri embassy was a fortress of tranquility amidst the growing storm. From her penthouse office, Mai Terumi watched the chaos unfold on a dozen holographic screens. A grim expression on her face. The city's instability was threatening to scuttle years of diplomatic work. The resource treaty, so crucial to Kiri's future, was in jeopardy. The port is the target, Ao said, standing behind her, his cybernetic eye glowing softly as it processed intelligence feeds. The riots, the financial attack, they are all diversions. Our sources indicate a massive cyber attack is being prepared against the Junin Port Authority. If the port is crippled, all international trade ceases. The treaty becomes worthless. Mai nodded, her fingers steepled before her lips. This is no longer a domestic issue. The Joker is about to commit an act of international economic terrorism. The GCPD was overwhelmed, a fact Commissioner Yamanaka had tearfully admitted on a secure channel minutes earlier. The city's government was paralyzed with fear. Relying on them was not an option. This creature, this Joker, Mai mused, her voice a low, dangerous purr. He is a force of nature. And a force of nature cannot be dealt with by committees and bureaucrats. What are you suggesting, Ambassador? Ao asked. I am suggesting, Mai said, rising from her chair, that when the official channels of power fail, one must turn to the unofficial ones. She walked to her private comms console, one that was linked directly to Kiri's most advanced intelligence network. She asked the standard diplomatic frequencies, inputting a complex authorization key that opened a single, heavily encrypted channel. She had acquired the frequency after the attack on the embassy, a gift from her own intelligence agents who had analyzed the unique energy signature of the Batman's communications. It was a direct line to the Shadow King of Kohona Gotham. It was time to see if he was as shrewd a politician as he was a warrior. Naruto. The alerts came in a flood, a digital tidal wave crashing into the Batcave. First, a notification from his most secure personal server. A message from Hinata Hyuga. He opened it, his eyes widening as he saw the elegant, lethal simplicity of the Joker's financial attack algorithm. It was brilliant, and she had seen it. Seconds later, a low-frequency alarm chimed. Kasumi's shadow marker. It was active, a silent scream for aid from the city's dark heart. Then, the diplomatic channel, a line so secure he never expected it to be used, lit up with an incoming message request from the Kiri embassy. He accepted it, and Mai Terumi's calm, steady voice filled the cave, her words painting a grim picture of an impending international crisis at the port. At the exact same moment, Tenten's voice, frayed and exhausted, crackled in his ear from the forge. Naruto, I've got it. I've broken through his masking protocols. All the chaos, all the digital attacks. They're all just noise to hide one massive viral payload. It's aimed at the Junin port mainframe. He's going to seize control of every crane, every freighter, every security system. He's going to turn the entire port into his personal weapon. It all clicked into place. The financial blitz, the gang wars, it was all a screen of smoke and blood. The real target was the port. The Joker was about to cut the city's throat. For a moment, Naruto was paralyzed by the sheer scale of it. 4 fronts, 4 distinct, complex crises, all culminating in a single catastrophe. He couldn't be in 4 places. He looked at his hands, then back at the map of his burning city. No, he couldn't, but they could. A new clarity, cold and absolute, washed over him. He was not just a soldier anymore. He was a general. He moved with a speed he hadn't realized he possessed, his fingers flying across multiple holographic keyboards, becoming the central node in a new, impossible network. He sent a text back to Hinata on the same encrypted app. The algorithm is a key, not a weapon. It's designed to track the flow of money back to its source. Follow it. Find his accounts. You are my economic warfare division. Shut him down. He activated the Shadow Marker's homing beacon, projecting a location in an abandoned subway tunnel onto Kasumi's heads-up display. His voice, the modulated growl of the bat, came through her comms. The riots are a feint. The leaders are being played. I am sending you the locations of the 3 primary instigators. Neutralize them. Do not kill. Use non-lethal force only. End the war. You are my street command. He opened the channel to Maid Terumi. Ambassador, your intelligence is correct. I cannot get the GCPD to the port in time. You can. Use your diplomatic authority. Telephone. Tell the port commissioner that Kiri has intelligence of an imminent, state-sponsored terrorist attack. Convince him to initiate a full lockdown. Code Omega. He will understand. You are my political arm. Finally, he spoke to Tenten. His voice a steady anchor in the storm. 10. Forget the rest of the city. Reinforce the port's mainframe. Build me a digital fortress. I'm going in, and I need you to be my eyes. He cut the connections. 4 women, 4 masters of their respective fields, were now in motion, acting on his orders. They were unaware of each other, 4 threads in a complex web of his own design. He stood, pulling on the new cowl. He was no longer a lone vigilante. He was the commander of a secret army, a silent convergence against a singular, laughing madness. The pieces were on the board. The real battle for Kohona Gotham had just begun. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Heart of Arkham. The data coalesced in the Batcave with the grim finality of a death sentence. The disparate threads of chaos, meticulously traced by 4 brilliant women, all wove back to a single, impossible point of origin, the Kohona Gotham Correctional Facility for the criminally esoteric. Hinata's algorithm had unspooled the Joker's financial web, following the ghost money through 1,000 digital alleyways to its source, a blind trust that made a single, massive payment each month to a private medic. Al's suite in Arkham's maximum security Naraku wing. May's diplomatic pressure had cracked the facility's notoriously corrupt bureaucracy, revealing that the suite was occupied by a John Doe patient, admitted a year prior, whose records were sealed by an authority even the warden feared to question. Kasumi's sources in the underworld whispered that the unique chemical precursors for the Joker's laughing gas, impossible to synthesize in a normal lab, were identical to compounds used in Arkham's experimental pharmacology wing, compounds that had been vanishing from inventory for months. All roads led to the madhouse. The Joker wasn't just a former patient. He was a current resident. The lunatics were not just running the asylum, one of them was running the entire city from within its padded walls. Batman stood before the holographic map, the city's crimson alerts now feeling like a symptom of the deeper sickness festering on that cursed island. He had to get inside, not as a phantom subduing a riot, but as a surgeon, cutting his way to the heart of the tumor. And for that, he needed a guide who knew the anatomy of the madness. He opened the secure channel to Dr. Harleen Quinzel. It's insane, Harleen whispered, her voice a ghost in the encrypted comm link. They were finalizing the plan, a desperate gambit born of necessity. But it's the only way. Containment breach protocol drill, level 4. It's a protocol I designed myself for testing response times. It initiates a full facility lockdown, restricts all staff movement to their designated sectors, and kills the interna L surveillance network for a preset duration. It will give you a 90-minute window. No more. And the Joker. Batman's voice was a low growl from the other end. He'll know something is wrong, she admitted. But he'll think it's an internal power play or a genuine emergency. He won't know it's you. Not until you're at his door. The rendezvous point was the asylum's morgue, the one section of the facility with an external, unmonitored disposal chute. It was a grim port of entry, but fitting. He moved through the stormy night, a shadow among shadows, and breached the island's perimeter with contemptuous ease. He met Harleen in the cold, sterile silence of the morgue, the air thick with the scent of formaldehyde and decay. She was dressed in her doctor's coat, but her face was pale. Our eyes filled with a mixture of terror and fierce determination. Ready? He asked. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's go wake the devil. They moved through the silent service corridors, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive quiet. They reached a security nexus, a small room filled with humming servers. Harleen logged into a terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Initiating protocol drill now. Once I press this, there's no going back. She pressed enter. For a moment, it worked. The facility's main power hummed down, replaced by the stark, flashing crimson of emergency lights. Heavy steel doors slammed shut throughout the asylum, their booming echoes like the closing of a tomb. A pre-recorded, synthesized voice began to drone from the PA system. Containment breach drill initiated. All staff, proceed to designated safe zones. This is a drill. And then, the voice cut out, replaced by a sound that made Harleen's blood run cold. Laughter. It was the Joker's laughter, high and manic, crackling through every speaker in the facility. The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging them into a terrifying darkness broken only by the chaotic pulse of emergency strobes. Oopsie. The Joker's voice sang through the PA, dripping with mock surprise. Looks like someone tried to shut down the party just as it was getting started. Silly bats. Didn't you know? You see. And lock me in here with you. You're locked in here with us. A new sound joined the laughter. A single, high-pitched electronic tone, followed by the deafening, sequential clang of 1,000 magnetic locks disengaging. The sound of every cell door in Arkham sliding open. The drill was over. The riot had begun. Their world became a nightmare of strobing lights and echoing screams. The service corridor, their planned safe route, was compromised. They were forced into the main wards, a gauntlet of their worst fears. They entered the experimental therapy wing, only for the corridor ahead to err. Upped in a sheet of brilliant orange flame. A figure in a scorched, winged jumpsuit danced in the inferno, laughing. Garfield Lins. The Firefly. Burn, pretty doctor. Burn for the pretty lights. He shrieked. Batman moved instantly, a blur of motion. He pushed Harleen behind him, his armored cape, a Nomex weave, absorbing the heat of the next blast. Lins is obsessed with patterns of light, Harleen said. Her voice tight with fear but her mind still working. He's drawn to strobing flashes. Batman processed the intel, pulling a small disc from his belt. He threw it down the hall. It adhered to the far wall and began to emit a blinding, hypnotic strobe pattern. Lins, mesmerized, turned his attention to it, firing his flamethrower in ecstatic bursts. In that moment of distraction, Batman fired a grapple line, not at Lins, but at a fire suppression valve on the ceiling above him. The pipe ruptured, dousing the pyromaniac in a torrent of cold, fire-retardant foam. They pressed on, deeper into the asylum's heart, entering the psychological warfare wing. The air here was different, carrying a faint, acrid smell. Scarecrow's ward, Harleen whispered, clutching his arm. He's found I to aerosolize his fear toxin through the ventilation system. The world began to warp at the edges. The walls seemed to breathe, the distant screams sounded like his mother's. He saw the flash of a gun. The glint of pearls scattering on a dirty alley floor. He faltered, the old wound, the one that never healed, tearing open. It's not real, Batman. Harleen's voice cut through the haze, an anchor in the storm of his past. He preys on trauma. His toxin amplifies your deepest fear. But it's just chemistry. It's a trick of the mind. I'm here. This is real. You are not that helpless little boy. You are the thing that monsters fear. Quote. Her words, a combination of clinical analysis and profound faith, were a lighthouse. He focused on her voice, on the solid reality of her presence beside him. And pushed the phantoms back into their graves. He recalibrated his cowl's rebreather, filtering the toxin, and they moved through the ward of nightmares, leaving the cowering form of Jonathan Crane behind them. They were cornered in the medical wing's central rotunda by a mountainous figure, a man whose body was a grotesque landscape of muscle and tubing. Bane. The Bat. The man's voice was a mew. Lead rasped from behind a terrifying luchador mask. I have broken your predecessor. It will be an honor to break his replacement. He charged. Batman met him, but it was like hitting a wall of granite. Bane caught him, lifting him into the air, his powerful hands beginning to squeeze, to bend him backwards. The suit groaned, the armor plating beginning to buckle. His venom. Harleen shouted, Poin. Ting to the tubes pumping green fluid into Bane's body. It's a super steroid, but it has a psychoactive component. It feeds on his obsession with victory, but it's rooted in the trauma of the prison where he was raised. The name, Peñadura, Peñadura. Batman growled through the pressure, forcing the words out. You are still their prisoner. Still that frightened little boy in the dark. For a single, crucial instant, Bane's eyes widened behind his mask. The relentless assault paused, his mind thrown back into a memory of darkness and fear. That hesitation was all Batman needed. He Octiva, Ted the high-voltage charge in his gauntlets, sending a massive jolt of electricity through Bane's body, directly into the Venom control unit on his back. The unit sparked and exploded, and the giant of a man crumpled to the floor. Unconscious, they found refuge in a reinforced security office, barricading the door. Batman leaned against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the suit's AI reporting multiple system failures. Harleen slid to the floor, shaking, the adrenaline finally catching up to her. In the quiet of the room, surrounded by the muffled sounds of the riot, she looked at him. She saw not just the myth, but the man, battered, exhausted, but utterly unbroken. The man who had shielded her with his own body, who had trusted her voice to guide him through his own worst fears, who had fought monsters and won. I used to think you were a fascinating psychological study, she whispered, her voice raw. A perfect storm of trauma and obsession, channeled into a symbol. I was wrong. She got to her feet and walked towards him. In that hall, when the toxin hit, you trusted me. You let me in. She reached up, her trembling fingers touching the edge of his cowl, just beside his jaw. I'm not just fascinated by the Batman anymore, she said, her voice thick with an emotion that was no longer academic. I think I'm falling for the man who is. They reached the Naraku wing. The corridor was silent, pristine, untouched by the chaos. They breached the door to the private suite, weapons ready, expecting the Joker. The room was empty. It was a control center. A dozen monitors showed live feeds of the chaos they had just fought through. Others showed Hinata's data streams, Kasumi's street war, May's diplomatic lockdown. He had been watching them all. On the central Nitor was a live schematic of the Amaterasu project's main geothermal reactor. A single, leather-bound patient file lay on the central desk. Harleen picked it up. The patient's name was redacted, but his medical and psychological history was laid bare in terrifying detail. A unique, complex psychosis, tied to a severe chemical imbalance, she read aloud, her voice trembling. Prone to extreme episodes, but stabilized by an experimental chemical agent, compound C27. Her eyes darted from the file to the schematic of the reactor on the screen. She saw the chemical equations, the catalyst formulas. She saw what the reactor was really making. The clean energy was just a byproduct. The primary function of the massive, city-saving machine was to synthesize a single chemical on an industrial scale. Compound C27. Her blood ran cold. The file, the reactor, the city-wide chaos, it all crashed together in her mind, forming a picture of such monstrous, inverted logic that she felt she might be sick. The Joker's ultimate plan was not to destroy the city. It wasn't about murder or anarchy for their own sake. He was a performer, and this was his grandest, most benevolent act. He was going to use the reactor to inject his cure, his stabilizing agent, into the city's water supply. He was going to normalize the brain chemistry of every man, woman, and child. He was going to make them all sane. Just like him. Harleen looked at Batman, her eyes wide with a horror far greater than any monster in the asylum's halls could ever conjure. Oh my God, she whispered. He's not trying to create chaos. He's trying to create a new kind of order. The riot, the hunt, the entire night of terror, it had all been a delay tactic. A final, brilliant piece of misdirection to keep the Bat occupied while the curtain rose on the final act. Chapter 8 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.